All right. Well, being peace in the midst of war. I thought that was a good topic for today. Uh, and we're going to especially for the guys listening on YouTube, the book that's pictured there, When Things Fall Apart, one of Pema's many masterpieces, maybe the one book that I would recommend to anybody. And if you don't have it on your shelf, we're going to go into it today in a kind of different way. I don't think I've ever done a book thing like this, but I'm going to work with one chapter of it, which is it's chapter 16 if you have the book, and it's called The Servants of Peace. And I really want to talk about how you can be peace in the midst of war. So I think I can stop this and we can get onto it. I think it'll be interesting. Hope so, anyway. All right. No, that's not what I want. Uh, we are in the midst of war. There's probably 60 plus hot wars on the planet right now, many of which we don't have any idea about. Uh, but they're there. And then, but even in our own country, I mean, well, we started one of the hot wars, and this along with Israel in the Middle East, uh, war of choice, war of aggression, really. Uh, but there's many wars going on right here in this country. Just to list off a few of the most important ones: war against poor people, uh, just the way the economy is structured. Uh, War against people of color, war against women, not necessarily a hot war like you would imagine with armies and such, but war nevertheless. A war against anybody who, uh, doesn't just uh, identify with just a male and female thing. And it goes on. It goes on, and then most of all, the thing we're going to look at today, if we want to try to be a force for peace in the midst of war, uh, is the war each of us wage against ourselves. Tricky war, uh, but it's the war that actually has to be stopped. And this is going to be a little talk that's sort of like boot camp for spiritual peacemakers. If you're interested in peace and you're interested in actually uh, making peace with yourself, uh, when things fall apart is absolutely essential manual. I don't know how many times I've read it. For years, I took it as the only book with me going to Haiti and read one chapter a day. And it's amazing how it always applied to uh, making a pilgrimage to Haiti. So I'd really recommend getting a used copy of the book and just when things fall apart in your life, it's the best guide I know. Now today we're going to just do excerpts and sort of bullet points from chapter 16, Servants of Peace, and so I'm just going to dive into that. In terms of our own, we call this the Department of War now, not the Department of Defense, although it still is legally the Department of Defense. Instead of spending trillions of dollars and months and years practicing ways to defeat our enemies, what if we could spend our time and treasure dissolving the causes of those kind of wars? But then also, again, the whole thing here is to dissolve the causes of the war we're making on ourselves. One Buddhist term, well, we'll have a couple of Buddhist terms from Sanskrit today. One Buddhist term is the bodhisattva. Uh, and a bodhisattva refers to any person who's committing themselves to a path of compassion. Again, self-compassion is the start of that. And bodhisattvas are referred to as the servants of peace. Okay, compassion leads to peace. And the other word that we're going to, and the subject of the structure of chapter 16, the servants of peace, are what they call the paramitas, and these are sort of six. There are six paramitas we're going to talk about today, and I don't do them in order. And they're really it's the six levels of training to be a servant of peace, to declare peace between you and yourselves. Uh, and these six trainings, basically a big picture, these six trainings enable your consciousness to cross what the Buddhists would call the river of suffering, the river of samsara, to cross the river of suffering to the other shore of peace. And for those of you who have dipped into uh, the wetware we have up here to our whole brain, the river of suffering is duality, and uh, its source is in the left brain, and the right brain is can deal with non-duality, not two. Making two is war. It's interesting that peace. This is the peace symbol. It's not all over the world, not in Ireland. Funny story about that sometime, but this is two, and uh, and that's the essence of war. Our side, the enemy. Okay. Uh, Peace comes from non-duality, not making two. And the right brain is there. And so we need both of it. To have a whole brain is great, but you to realize when you're suffering, when you're making war on yourself, where it's coming from. That's the start of it. Now, these paramitas that I'm going to list off here in a minute, they're not about measuring up to anything. They are about a journey of exploring uh, your whole brain, and that means exploring beyond the mind that measures, which is the left brain. And we have to measure all kinds of things, practical things. But when you're measuring yourself, I know that feeling. For years, I measured myself against perfection. And believe me, that's a kind of war you don't want to get into. But that's all that happens in the left brain. And, it's practical. You got to measure distances, you got to measure recipe, things in a recipe. That's fine. But when you apply it to yourself, see, so we want to explore the beyond the mind that measures into the vast openness of the immeasurable. And that's the right brain. And most of our training in a spirituality and in a contemplative mode is spending more time in the right brain, understanding how putting them together helps you declare peace with yourself. But it's not about measuring up to anything. And these are just directions and suggestions for exploration. And I'll have good notes on this because basically I was just reading the book and trying to boil it down, the one chapter. So here are the six. And again, you don't need to write them down. We'll go through them one on one. And then when you get the notes, if you want it, if you like writing it down, you can. But the six paramitas, the training in becoming peace yourself is number one is generosity. Number two is discipline. Well, that's sort of a tough word. Sounds like measuring up, but it's really not. Number three is patience. Number four is exertion. Number five is meditation. And number six, the Sanskrit word there is prajna, and it's translated a lot of different ways. It would be the practice of understanding. So generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and understanding. Now, this is a kind of a framework from the Buddhist tradition. And so I'm going to just give you a few sort of like tease out a few elements of this, and then you will have it in the notes. And really, the best thing would be to, if you happen to have the book, and I know some of you have the book, just read this chapter. All right. Well, the first thing is gratitude, and that's in a lot of traditions. But that this journey to being at peace with yourself starts with gratitude. And personally, something interesting happened to me almost 40 years ago. one thing led to another. I went to a 10-day centering prayer retreat with Thomas Keating up in Snowmass in the mountains. We sat for hours a day. And somewhere in the middle of it, I was struggling. I was struggling with that much sitting, of course, as anybody would. But at some point, it dawned on me why I was sitting, why I did this. Because believe me, I had some ideas about day two or day three of sitting hours a day, and in silence, pretty much silence. It dawned on me that at one point, and this was a breakthrough that colored the time up till now, that I was not sitting to become grateful. I was sitting because I was grateful. That's an interesting kind of hokey pokey or 180. That I'm not sitting to become grateful. If you sit to get anything, if you have meditation and the idea that you're going to get something, uh, that's backwards. And the way I put it, I wrote it, remember writing it in my journal. I'm not sitting to become grateful. I'm sitting because I am grateful. Everything changed at that point. So a journey of generosity is one of connecting with your inner wealth, which came through. A lot of other stuff came through with 4 or 5 days of sitting. But at some point, I got in touch with that inner wealth, whatever you want to call that center point. And it's about connecting with that and are cherishing it so profoundly that you're willing to give away whatever blocks it. And there's a lot that blocks that sense of inner wealth. You can call it the Buddha nature, you can call it the Christ hidden within you. All the traditions have a name for this inner wealth. And once you touch it and you start to cherish it profoundly, then you're willing to give away whatever blocks it. And, if you remember the 70,000 veils thing, that there's 70,000 veils between you and your inner wealth, according to the Sufis, then you're willing to drop them, even though some of them you're sort of holding on too tight. We'll talk about that. But basically, gratefulness is being willing to let go of the stuff that gets in the way. And to be more specific, what blocks your access to this inner wealth is a kind of habit energy that came out of just a trauma, just the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune as a young child or in previous life, and it's built on a kind of imagined poverty. I mean, we're small, we can't do anything. The world is big, we feel poor, you know, uh, and that's that habit energy that we have to uh, be willing to give away, but you have to see it first. And when we work with generosity, that's the first thing we discover is our addiction to wanting to hold on to these habits we formed as a kid, even though they don't serve us now. So it's sort of like this is generosity. And it's often one of the first preliminary practices in Tibetan Buddhism before they actually drop into meditation. That's farther down the line. So that's a little bit on generosity. It's again, first it starts with when you let go, and all these things tie together when you have a practice of letting go, whatever gets between you and your own inner wealth, unshakable love that's at your very center. Is what I'd say that is there. Well, I don't see that. Well, maybe there's 70 million veils for some of us. I think I have more than 70,000, still probably have plenty. I can lose sight of that. I don't have time to tell about it, but this weekend was a really tough weekend after my getting hacked, and then also maybe some of you guys opened up some some robot invitation that I was sending to you. Well, it wasn't me, and it went down. It went downhill from there the whole weekend, including a nightmare last night that just woke me up. I couldn't get back to sleep. I'm willing to let go of this stuff. Now, the second one is it needs a little more translation discipline. I think you understand generosity. People give something, you just give something, especially something you love, to somebody else. You're generous. But discipline, it has to be, what do they mean by the practice of discipline? Well, first of all, it takes discipline to dissolve the causes of aggression. And, this is a war of aggression that we're fighting in Iran, along with the Israelis against. There was no cause for it, really. They're trying to make up causes, but there isn't. And if you want to dissolve the causes of aggression that you have against yourself, and I still have those, it takes a kind of discipline, a gentle but precise discipline. And if without a practice of discipline, uh, we don't have enough structure to break through and flourish. So it's really more about um, analyzing your life and seeing what the structure is. There's habit energy is a huge structure, and we've had it since we were kids. And we spend a lot of time. We're sort of addicted to certain things. Okay. Generosity, we discover we're addicted to holding on to stuff because, if we give it away, we're poor. Well, so discipline strengthens your ability not to be in an actual emotional sense. If you have a kind of structure in your life, a structure of a practice. Uh, this morning, after this horrible nightmare, when I woke up and just couldn't get back to sleep, and it was about 4 o'clock, which is time. It was right before I normally wake up on a day like this. Normally, I would get a cup of coffee, do my spiritual reading, then go in and sit, and then do any last minute stuff. But I just went right into sit. I went right into what I do every morning because I just had to go in. It was dark, and I had to go to that structure for some light. And just having that ability, uh, it helps you when you're having a mood swing. It helps you not to be derailed for days or weeks or months by a mood swing. You need enough structure for that. Okay. You need a kind of structure to deal with painful habit energy. And I would say the key point I've learned about having a spiritual practice that you need just enough discipline, enough structure to break through and flourish. Too much structure, you don't break through. You're just beating yourself up. Too little structure, uh, you don't break through. So, how much structure? Not too tight, not too loose. And when we work with discipline, when that becomes one of your practices, what do we discover? We discover our addiction to sort of zone out and not relate at all. Yeah, I think Pem was very wise there, and you can everybody needs a rest every once in a while. Everybody needs to, in a way, go into the comfort zone at some point just to relax. You know, but we can get it. Certain people, and because of the way your life was, were addicted to zone out and to not relate at all. Yeah, and you overcome that if you have just enough in the right kind of structure. Now, there's a lot of connection with patience and war. Um, and meditation alerts you to all these things because when you meditate, you're sitting and you will feel a basic restlessness. And there's other times in life. I felt that when I was thrown offline from my Google thing because I couldn't communicate that way for a couple of days. I felt restless, and and then I wanted to fix it fast. Okay, and when you feel you must have a resolution of an issue now, and that kind of restlessness and wanting to change the situation now is the root of war. War is the most impatient thing you could do. Diplomacy, when Obama had John Kerry working about the nuclear problem there, it took 2.5 years and brought in all these people to the table, et cetera, et cetera. And then they got an agreement that Trump ripped up for whatever reason. And now, now he's sending a couple real estate guys to try to negotiate this, and they're getting nowhere. It's going to take time. And so to sit still, to take a few sacred breaths when you feel speedy, when you feel like you got to rush, when you feel like I've got to resolve this issue now. Uh, uh, and that gives you enough space for the usual habitual kind of addictive thing not to happen. We referred last time to Rilke's advice to a young poet: be patient with everything unresolved in your heart. That's a practice. That line is it's an incredible line. I go to it all the time. It saves my bacon a lot of time. Be patient with everything unresolved in your heart. Well, patience is what dissolves anger, which is why our president is angry all the time. You know, just that correlates. He does not have patience. Uh, and I think mostly we when we work with developing patience, practicing patience, we discover our addiction to restlessness and speeding through life. You know, why are we speeding through life? Check it out sometime at the pace you're living, you know, because you haven't developed patience. Meditation, which we're going to, is the fifth one, is teaches us that too. So these all interlock. Now, exertion is a very interesting, the fourth one, exertion is a very interesting one. It's not about pushing yourself or powering through things, exerting, or, you know, that kind of thing. It's not about that. Uh, it's about really exertion, really, that the practice of that is about connecting with inspiration, connecting with the spark and joy in any moment. Here's the famous Rumi take on this is my rendering of it. He said, today, like every day, we wake up empty and afraid. Don't rush to start working on your to-do list. Instead, take down a musical instrument. Make what you love be what you do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Now, this is terrific advice for performing a spiritual practice and the need for it. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and afraid. Don't rush and start working on your to-do list, which is the way I lived. Oh, gee, for the first half of my life, I'd wake up afraid with the to-do list staring me in the face and the fear that I'd never get it done. Because if you have to finish your to-do list every day, if you're perfect, you know, if you want to be perfect, then people will love you if you finish your to-do list. Well, he said, don't start the day that way. Instead, start with spiritual practice. His image is instead take down a musical instrument, make what you love be what you do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And you see, there you have that connecting with inspiration and the spark of joy. Uh, Now, I'm just going to read you a poem that I wrote a while back. I wrote it in the fall, and it's still true. Uh, and the title is What Gets Me Out of Bed Most Days. Today, like every other day, I woke up eyeing the clock. It was 4:30 a.m. Somehow, it's always harder to get up and practice in fall. Perhaps it's that all of nature is bedding down for winter. I don't know. But I do know this: how you start your day matters. In fact, it might be the only thing that really matters. When it's really tough going and the warmth and comfort of the blankets whisper their oh so sweet siren song, I think of my Dharma pals, my pray mates, eyeing the clock too. Or what's worse, I see them hitting the diabolical snooze button as a voice whispers, oh hell, does it really matter? Well, folks, I'm here to say that it does indeed matter that you crawl out of bed and do spiritual practice. Willingness is nearly everything on the spiritual path. Willingness plus exertion and interdependence. Willingness plus exertion and interdependence. You see, none of us sit alone, and none of us wakes up alone. Your practice helps the whole world. And you're waking up each morning helps the whole world wake up. every morning, every effort matters. And knowing that we're all in this together and helping each other forever is what gets me out of bed most days, on days like this. Yeah, today, as a matter of fact. Uh, and so, uh, you know, this happened today. I mean, I went in strictly just carrying this nightmare and looking for some light. Of course, I light the place up, and I know my practice will help me out. But then I ended up praying for, well, I always end up praying for all of you and everybody, but then some special people came up in the course of the sitting. And so I included them too, some people I don't normally include. So, none of us, none of us wake up alone. That's the interdependence part. I, uh, and it's also generosity. See all these things. It's like a weave here. Yeah, yeah. So it does matter. And it really matters how you start your day. If you do a journal, if you do journaling, I would note the days that I skipped meditation in my past. They weren't great days. Okay. Now, meditation. It's the fifth one. And here's Pema straight from the book. She says, and from this chapter, she says, if we really knew how unhappy it was making this whole planet, that we all try to avoid pain and seek pleasure, how that was making us so miserable and cutting us off from our basic heart and our basic intelligence, then we would practice meditation as if our hair was on fire. You if we were really aware of how unhappy we're making the whole planet, and it's very simple. We're trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Nothing. Everybody has pain, and pleasure is not bad. But if everything we do is trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure, how that was making us so miserable and cutting us off from our basic heart, our basic intelligence, that whatever you call that place of wealth. If we realized that that was cutting us off from that, we would practice meditation as if our hair was on fire. There's no more thinking I can do this later or maybe next year, or especially when you get to be 76, going on 77, thinking about, well, I'll do that next year. Okay, I don't do that anymore. My hair was on fire this morning. Meditation is probably the only human activity, now this is another point she makes, that doesn't add anything to the picture. So when you sit, you're just sitting. Everything is allowed to come and go without embellishment. Now you will discover boredom when you meditate, and it's very interesting to understand the boredom. And when we hit boredom, because we're now a culture of distraction, it's hard to see anybody walking, in the park or doing, without earbuds in. They're listening to somebody else while they're walking. We have a culture of distraction. People ride the subways in most major cities. They're all listening to something or reading something. They're not really in on the subway, just seeing what was going on, for probably good reason for some people. But just a meditation is a time where you got no earbuds on, and it's a time where, because there's nothing distracting you, and because you're not embellishing anything, you're not wanting any diversion, you're just sitting with what is. Uh, you have this weird feeling like there's emptiness here. There's no distraction, so maybe you'll make some stuff up with your mind. But Pema's teacher, Chogyam Trungpa, talked about boredom and how why it was so useful. And he said, when you actually go into meditation, yeah, you'll hit boredom in it. And most of the time, it's hot boredom. What is hot boredom? Well, you get restless. Nothing's happening. Nobody's talking to you. Well, your mind is, but it's probably telling you, what the hell are you doing here? You could be doing something else. But I mean, so there are those voices. You basically lay thinking and embellishment aside, and you just are there with the breath the moment. And if the voice is yakety yakking, that's fine. You don't have to add anything to it. But at some point we get bored, and that's what he calls hot boredom. Whether it's restless, I mean, ring the damn bell. Oh, we have all these kind of things. We want to make something happen. Flashing lights, great insight. It's not the point. That's hot boredom. And he said, if you can go through the hot boredom, if you can actually just don't do any of those things, just don't embellish anything, just be there with the breath in the moment with whatever's naturally happening, pain in the back, and you're with the pain in the back. Don't have to get rid of. Point is, there's nothing to change. There's nothing to make better. There's nothing to get rid of. This is why I say that it's the only human activity that by design doesn't add anything to the picture. The picture's complete. You're just sitting there. You're breathing. You're alive. You're aware. And it's totally nonviolent and non-aggressive as occupation. But believe me, you can do a lot of violence to yourself. Well, I must be doing this wrong. I never amount to anything. You know all that stuff. And we discover our addiction to thinking, to entertainment in the mind, and also to kind of restlessness. Um, and it's training in doing something that Pema once called collaborating with reality instead of resisting it. Because you can just sit there and nothing's happening for a while. To me, that's a sweet spot. But when your own um, wanting to make something happen. I need to change something. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I need to do this technique and all that kind of stuff. No, there's nothing to change. You're whole and complete just as you are. And meditation helps you discover how hard it is just to sit there. Now, when you actually can do that, which I've got the knack of doing now every once in a while, uh, that's what Trungpa called cool boredom. It's sort of cool. You just sort of rest in it, like cool on a hot day. Yeah. But basically, he gets this idea that when you're sitting, we're going to sit in a minute. And if you're collaborating with reality instead of resisting it. That's a key thing for just all of life to collaborate with reality and not resist it. Who can do that on a regular basis? Well, you'd be a bodhisattva. You'd be heading that way. Now, the last thing is prajna or understanding. And the last two practices are different from the others. They sort of they're more intense meditation and really understanding at the depth of something, plumbing the depths of something. Those are intense and related, and they require a special sort of cultivation, which is why to meditate every day, you're trying to cultivate this ability because it's one of the hardest things to do because you're not doing anything. It's ludicrous, really. So meditation and understanding go together. Understanding arises when meditation is developed in the deepest sense. When you have a regular focused sitting, you maybe study and contemplate the teachings. That's what they call Lectio Divina, sacred reading. And then maybe you have some deeper intuitive reflection. That's why I like to write after sitting. Okay. So these are deeper and more profound explorations of the right brain. Meditation is a totally right brain activity. Nothing to do. Doing is all left brain. This is just being. If you want to be peace, you want to just be peace, you have to spend time in the right brain doing these things. Now, the understanding that a bodhisattva will arrive at is imaginative, it's creative, it's all inclusive, it's kind, it's forgiving, it's terminally hopeful and compassionate. But the other side of that, to actually go the distance with this, you have to have a capacity to hold beauty and suffering in balance. Because you can't sugarcoat it, and you don't want to be a doom scroller. You don't want to be a prophet of doom. So you hold beauty and suffering in this world. This world. Here's the way the world is. It's beautiful, and it's terrible. And have to learn how to hold both of those in balance, and it takes courage, and most of all, like a sense of humor. Not that there's anything funny about genocide or anything, but it's more like if you remember watching MASH, these people are in a horrible situation, guys coming in, or we're watching ER now, the old 90s series, uh, there's you have to have a sense of humor when you're dealing with such tragedy on a regular basis. You don't take yourself, bodhisattvas don't tend to take themselves too seriously. They have a light view of it. Dalai Lama would be a good example. Pema would be a good example. She talks about how she blows it all the time, right? And she's just this grasping, addicted human being at some point, but then she has a way out. So I guess this when you get to prajna, to understanding, it's the in this process you learn how to make friends with yourselves. And I mean selves plural, because we have this what the Buddhists call the a small mind, with a small self, with a lowercase self, which you could call ego, and uh, the big mind, uh, which the Hindus would have a capital S, which would mean your immortal, eternal, infinite self, to discovering the riches, and to make friends with both. You don't have to slay the ego and get rid of all that. No, you got to make friends with it. And also, meditation is time to actually be around and not doing something, so you can bump, like Merton said. He says, if you really have a solid prayer life, every once in a while you'll cross over into God. Every once in a while, you can't control it, but if you take time out to meditate, pray, uh, every day, you will, every once in a while, cross over into the big mind, the big self. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'd read the whole chapter because, uh, and the whole book really, but that chapter will really give you a structure for that's really helpful. Well, I think.